guys, welcome back to my channel. It's been a while. I say that at the start of every video, but it's true. I've been meaning to make this video for about a month, and I've just put it off 1,000 times because I suppose it's just been a difficult month, which we'll get into, but I really appreciate you being here if you are here. If you're new here, my name is Jen. I am a disability advocate, PhD student from Ireland. I am autistic. I am also chronically ill for a long time, which is going to be the topic of this video, I suppose. But I really appreciate you being here. So today I'm going to be talking about my first adrenal crisis that happened as a result of having adrenal insufficiency or Addison's disease. And we're going to just talk about what happened, the experience. I was going to say what I learned, but in reality, I think I'm still processing a lot of it, but we're going to get into it. This video might be very long, but I think I'm going to try and cover, I suppose, the week preceding it, the crisis itself, how I found the hospital situation, and everything like that. So let's get into it. Okay, so I'm going to begin this video by saying, first off, that I am not a doctor. I don't pretend to know everything about endocrinology and Addison's disease or chronic illnesses in general. What I know is generally based on my own research, my own experiences, and things I've been told by my own endocrinologist. But that might not be applicable to everyone, so just take everything I say with a pinch of salt, I guess. But essentially what I have is I have Addison's disease, a secondary form of it. There are 3 types of Addison's disease, which is a chronic illness that essentially begins if you have a primary type where your adrenal glands, which sit above your kidneys, they're kind of like triangle shaped, they're tiny. My friend calls them my kidney hats. And she's a doctor, so I mean, it's a medical term in her head. When they basically fail to produce cortisol. I have a secondary form of that where the problem isn't actually inherently in my adrenals, but it's in the communication between my pituitary and my adrenals. And tertiary Addison's generally is when someone maybe has had their adrenal glands removed, maybe due to cancer, maybe due to chemotherapy, something like that, you know, something outside of their control. But as a result of the overwhelming situation across all 3 types is that there is a lack of cortisol production happening. So that's a super simplified version. I was unwell for about 11 years before I was diagnosed, and that's kind of, it's not typical, but it is relatively normal for a secondary type to take much longer to be diagnosed. It's rarer than primary. It's also not as dramatic. It's kind of like, I suppose, when someone with primary Addison's gets diagnosed, it can be really sudden. They can be hospitalized really fast. Their skin is also pigmented because they have an excess of a hormone called ACTH or aldosterone. Secondary, on the other hand, has a deficiency of that hormone, so your skin doesn't pigment, it doesn't change, and without that really obvious indication, it means that it can be really, really hard to get diagnosed because your symptoms pre-diagnosis are really general. For me, it was a lot of fatigue, muscle pain, dry eyes, dry mouth, tremors, low blood pressure, lots of different things, really poor immune system as well, just kind of catching everything. So it can take quite a long time to be diagnosed. It's a tough one. An adrenal crisis happens, and it's something that when you're diagnosed, you're very much made aware of. I think your doctors are very keen for you to understand the seriousness of the situation, which is them doing their job well, really. But it can be tough because it is really alarming to have medical professionals tell you, okay, you're diagnosed with this condition. It's going to be exceptionally challenging to manage because it changes on a daily basis, how your body responds to different things. But on top of it, there is a serious situation called a crisis that can occur, and you need to be really mindful of that because a crisis can be fatal, and it is fatal in quite a few cases, or can do significant damage. So a crisis happens when you cannot keep down your medication for a some reason. So when you're diagnosed, you're given generally hydrocortisone, but there's other types of steroids that mimic cortisol. And you take this throughout the day in different amounts depending on what suits you, your body, your metabolism, things like that. And this is generally fine. Like, it's, you know, if your day is very ordinary, consistent, nothing's exciting's happening, you kind of just tip along, like going through your life, taking your medication. There's 1,000 downsides to the medication. There's loads of difficulties with it, but that's not what this video is about. But if, for example, you have a stomach bug or a flu and you experience vomiting or diarrhea, or I suppose any reason for not being able to keep your medication down, your body can move into what's known as a crisis, where honestly the situation escalates exceptionally quickly and you need to take an emergency injection, which, as people with Addison's, we're meant to have with us at all times, which is 100 mils of hydrocortisone. It's meant to be injected straight into the muscle, and it's essentially something that needs to happen really quickly. 100 milligrams is quite a high dose compared to your daily dose of about between like 15 and 30 milligrams. Some people are on higher, some people are on lower. So it's an emergency situation. It also, unfortunately, a crisis also causes a huge imbalance in your body's electrolytes, and that can lead to you feeling, it feels like death, really. So there is a necessity to go to hospital to get hooked up to fluids for quite a long time, to be honest. So a crisis generally is something that you are made aware of very early on. When I was first diagnosed, I was told that a crisis, generally most people experience a crisis within the first year, sometimes two, because in the first year of diagnosis, managing your medication and learning what counts as a trigger for your stress when you need extra synthetic cortisol, all of those things is so unfamiliar to you that you're more likely to make mistakes, which is entirely fair. However, I think I didn't take this, I took it seriously, but I kind of didn't take it as something that would happen to me necessarily, because I was thinking, I've been dealing with chronic illnesses and like my health and being undiagnosed for like over a decade. I've done my degree and 2 masters and had relationships and dealt with horrendous things in the context of not being diagnosed. So for me, nothing could be worse than not knowing what was wrong with me, if that makes sense. So I knew myself, I was thinking, I have managed so well in life up till this point by being so pedantic about my health and being in charge of it myself, that I can totally avoid a crisis. Like, obviously that didn't work, but I did make it past the first year without a crisis. I had my crisis in the first week of March, and I was diagnosed, crisis was first week of March 2024, and I was diagnosed in January 2023, so slightly over a year. But I still think I did pretty well for the first year. Okay, sorry, I had to put on my glasses. My eyes are just really straining with the light coming in the window. But anyway, so I suppose to give you some context about what happened within the crisis itself, I live and work in Dublin. I study and work in Trinity College Dublin. So my life is here really, and I do live alone at the moment, which initially when I was moving to Dublin, my parents weren't thrilled about that, and I can fully understand why, because obviously if you have a kind of health condition and you're living alone, the risk is very difficult, because when you do start throwing up your meds, you know, you're slipping into a crisis, you can become incoherent really fast. I think once again this is another example of me thinking, well, that won't happen to me because I'm so good at managing myself. There was an arrogance and a stupidity to that that is so profound that I actually can't even examine it. I can't. But I also kind of feel for myself though when I think about how many years of managing I have done that led me to have that false belief in a way that I think is quite understandable. But the crisis itself happened on a Monday. and the previous week I was off work from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because I had a head cold at most. Since I suppose becoming diagnosed and going on steroid replacements for cortisol, my immune system definitely picked up. I haven't been catching as much colds and things. Before, I would kind of probably have a head cold every 2 weeks, like, or sometimes they would just kind of malaise into one big long head cold and but one big sinus infection. So even this head cold, when it came about, was not dramatic. It didn't feel bad. I think the way I look at it is, if I was in school, I definitely would have been sent to school anyway because I was fine, if that like tells you what it was like. But in this instance, it was the first time I'd been sick since probably, it was the first time in a few months. So I was trying to do all the things I should do, which I think is my MO in managing chronic illnesses, is I basically was saying, okay, I'm going to rest, I'm going to take some time off work, and I'm going to updose, or stress dose, whatever you call it, which is what you're advised to do if your body's under an additional stress, to double your dose for about 3 days. So to allow your body to cope with that additional stress, so that your body isn't focused on having such low cortisol, and it can focus on fighting infection or managing a psychological stress, grief, whatever it is. So I did that, and to be honest, I kind of felt fine. I was a bit stuffy, but I kind of felt like I was being a bit dramatic, but I still rested. And then the weekend came and I was definitely feeling better, but I had cancelled plans with friends and things because I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna definitely take it easy. And I thought that that helped. On the Sunday night, my sister was coming up to stay with me because she had a conference in Dublin the next day, which turned out to be exceptionally lucky that she was around. And we stayed up late chatting, but I felt tired in my muscles in the way that you do when you're kind of at the tail end of a head cold, but otherwise it basically I felt normal again. But the problem is, I think my standard of what's normal is very warped, based on feeling so crap for so long, that like my standard of what's normal is appallingly low, that I can say, oh, I'm actually fine again, when somebody else would actually say that they feel horrendous. So, and I don't know if being autistic comes into that. Well, I know it comes into that, but I don't know to what degree, in the sense of I sometimes am not very good at picking up on subtle shifts in my body and in my interoceptive awareness of, actually my blood pressure is a little bit lower today, or my legs are feeling very stiff and sore today, and actually I'm more dehydrated today, or things like that. I tend to pick up on those signals quite late, which is why I have to make such conscientious effort to journal these things. But if I take so much as a day off of that, I miss patterns. So it's not an ideal situation, really. But anyway, on the morning of the crisis itself, Monday, came about, and I woke up and I did have a massive headache. But I do have headaches and migraines a lot. So this headache felt a little bit more all-consuming, and kind of felt like it was coming from my shoulders all the way up. It definitely felt like it was coming from shoulders up, and the back of my neck. So I kind of thought, okay, maybe the glands on the back of my neck are swollen because I still have this infection, maybe. So I got up, but otherwise I felt okay. And once again, because I have done life with a huge degree of pain and in varying states of like where I should have been hospitalized or was hospitalized, I kind of just kept going. Like I'd gotten up, so I was like, oh well, I'm gonna get up and get ready for work, and that's just gonna be logically what I do. It's a very complicated one to explain,